Picture this: over 2 million Filipinos work abroad, sending home a staggering $37 billion in remittances last year alone. Money that keeps entire families afloat and drives the Philippine economy forward. But right now, in 2026, a silent storm is brewing across the globe. Countries that once welcomed OFWs with open arms are now slamming their doors shut through visa caps, mass deportations, and outright entry bans. Here's a shocking statistic that will make your blood run cold. Saudi Arabia alone expelled over 15,200 Filipinos in 2025, according to official Department of Migrant Workers data. And the country at number 1 on our list? Trust me, it's going to blow your mind. It's not who you'd expect. From the oil-rich Gulf states to Europe's economic powerhouses, and even America's shores, borders are tightening against Filipino workers and travelers at an unprecedented rate. Why now? A perfect storm of global economic recession, rising labor protectionism, and post-pandemic border paranoia has created this crisis. For Filipinos planning their OFW dreams, families dependent on overseas remittances, and Americans watching Philippine alliances amid South China Sea tensions, this affects everyone. The Philippines stands as one of the world's top labor exporters, but if these trends continue, the World Bank warns remittances could plummet by 10 to 15%, devastating millions of families back home. Today we're counting down the top 20 countries tightening borders against Filipinos. Each entry reveals fresh statistics, geopolitical connections, and why it matters to both Philippine and American interests. Number 1 will absolutely shock you. Stay with us. Your next career move might depend on this information. This video is for educational and informational purposes only. It does not support or oppose any country, government, or political ideology. Sources are listed in the description and pinned comment for transparency. Country number 20, New Zealand. Starting our countdown at 20, New Zealand. The land of the long white cloud has quietly implemented some of the world's strictest immigration controls. Prime Minister Christopher Luxon's government ended the working holiday scheme extensions that many Filipinos relied on, cutting available spots by 40% in 2025. The numbers tell a troubling story. Skilled worker visa approvals for Filipinos dropped 35% last year, despite New Zealand facing critical shortages in healthcare and agriculture. The government's New Zealand First policy now requires employers to prove no local worker is available, a process so bureaucratic that many simply hire domestically instead. What makes this particularly frustrating? New Zealand desperately needs Filipino nurses. Their healthcare system is hemorrhaging staff, yet visa processing times have stretched to 18 months. Filipino families watch opportunities slip away, while New Zealand hospitals operate understaffed. It's immigration policy fighting against economic reality. For Filipino workers, New Zealand represented the dream of starting fresh in a peaceful, developed nation. Now that dream comes with price tags most families cannot afford, and waiting lists that stretch beyond hope. Country number 19, Norway. Norway takes 19th place with policies that seem almost designed to exclude Filipino workers. The Scandinavian welfare state has implemented integration requirements, so stringent that even highly qualified professionals struggle to meet them. Language proficiency demands now exceed levels required for citizenship in most countries. The stark numbers paint the picture clearly. Work permit approvals for Filipinos fell 45% in 2025, the steepest decline among developed nations. Norway's oil wealth funds generous unemployment benefits for locals, reducing political pressure to welcome foreign workers. Meanwhile, Filipino seafarers, who helped build Norway's maritime industry, face new certification requirements that effectively shut them out of their own specialty. Here's where it gets particularly absurd. Norway imports Filipino nurses through private agencies at premium rates while rejecting direct applications from the same professionals. The system benefits middlemen while creating artificial scarcity that hurts both Filipino workers and Norwegian patients. The geopolitical irony runs deep. As NATO allies, Norway and the Philippines cooperate on security issues. Yet this partnership doesn't translate to civilian opportunities. For Filipino families, Norway's wealth seems tantalizingly close but systematically unreachable. Country number 18, Denmark. Denmark claims the 18th spot through what can only be described as bureaucratic warfare against foreign workers. The Danish government's paradigm shift in immigration policy has transformed one of Europe's most welcoming nations into a fortress of red tape and impossible requirements. The statistics are devastating for Filipino professionals. Engineering visa approvals plummeted 52% in 2025, despite Denmark's massive infrastructure projects desperately needing skilled workers. The positive list of acceptable professions now excludes traditional Filipino strengths like hospitality management and retail supervision. Even more telling, family reunification requirements have become so restrictive that married couples face years of forced separation. Prime Minister Mette Fredriksen's Social Democrats have embraced immigration restrictions that would make conservative parties blush. Housing requirements, income thresholds, and integration bonds create multiple barriers designed more to discourage than to screen applicants. Filipino workers who do manage to secure visas often find themselves trapped in bureaucratic cycles that consume years of their lives. The broader European context matters here. Denmark's restrictions influence EU-wide policies, making this small nation's decisions ripple across the continent. For Filipino families, Denmark's transformation from opportunity to obstacle represents a broader trend across wealthy European societies. Country number 17, Belgium. Belgium takes 17th place in what represents a complete reversal of decades-old immigration traditions. The heart of the European Union has become surprisingly hostile to Filipino workers, implementing policies that seem to contradict its own labor market needs. The numbers reveal a systematic squeeze. Work visa approvals for Filipinos dropped 38% in 2025, concentrated heavily in healthcare and IT sectors where Belgium faces critical shortages. The labor market test now requires employers to prove they've advertised positions for 6 months before hiring foreigners, a bureaucratic nightmare that most companies simply avoid by hiring locally or not at all. What makes Belgium's restrictions particularly painful is the false hope they create. Brussels' status as EU headquarters attracts thousands of Filipino applications, but approval rates hover around 15%, among the lowest in Western Europe. Families spend life savings on application fees and legal costs, only to face rejection letters that offer no meaningful explanation or appeal process. The political dynamics reveal deeper tensions. Flemish separatists use immigration restrictions as weapons against the federal government, while French-speaking Wallonia tries to maintain openness. Filipino workers become casualties of Belgium's internal divisions, caught between competing visions of national identity that they never asked to navigate. Country number 16, Sweden. Sweden holds 16th place, marking the end of the Swedish model of open immigration that once made it a beacon for Filipino professionals. The Social Democratic government's pivot toward restriction represents one of Europe's most dramatic policy reversals, driven by housing shortages and political pressure from the right-wing Sweden Democrats. The data tells a story of systematic exclusion. Work permit approvals for Filipinos fell 43% in 2025, with particularly severe restrictions in healthcare and social services, exactly the sectors where Sweden faces the most critical shortages. The establishment period now requires 2 years of proven employment before workers can bring families, creating forced separations that tear Filipino families apart. Stockholm's housing crisis has become a weapon against foreign workers. New requirements mandate that applicants must secure housing before visa approval, but Swedish landlords won't rent to people without residency permits. It's a classic bureaucratic catch-22 that effectively blocks legal immigration, while doing nothing to address the underlying housing shortage that created the problem. The irony cuts deep for Filipino healthcare workers. Sweden's aging population desperately needs their skills, yet political dynamics make welcoming them impossible. Filipino nurses who helped Swedish hospitals survive the pandemic now face deportation as visa extensions become nearly impossible to obtain. Country number 15, Netherlands. The Netherlands claims 15th place through policies that betray its historical reputation for tolerance and pragmatism. Dutch immigration restrictions have evolved into sophisticated barriers that appear reasonable on paper but prove impossible in practice for most Filipino applicants. Work permit statistics reveal the harsh reality. Approvals for Filipino professionals decreased 41% in 2025, despite critical shortages in technology and healthcare sectors. The Knowledge Migrant scheme now requires salary thresholds that exceed what most Dutch companies actually pay, creating an artificial elite that excludes skilled Filipino workers from middle-class opportunities. Prime Minister Mark Rutte's government has perfected the art of restriction without appearance of discrimination. Language requirements, integration courses, and civic knowledge tests create multiple failure points designed to reduce approvals without explicit nationality-based quotas. Filipino families navigate obstacle courses that consume years and life savings, often ending in rejection despite meeting technical requirements. The housing crisis compounds these challenges exponentially. Dutch cities face severe shortages that make finding accommodation nearly impossible for newcomers. Yet visa applications require proof of housing before approval. Filipino workers find themselves trapped between bureaucratic requirements and market realities that make legal immigration practically impossible. Country number 14, Germany. Germany takes 14th place despite its well-documented need for foreign workers. The land of the economic miracle has created immigration policies that seem designed by committee to satisfy everyone while helping no one. For Filipino professionals, Germany represents the most frustrating combination of opportunity and obstruction in Europe. The statistics paint a clear picture of systematic failure. Skilled worker visa approvals for Filipinos dropped 39% in 2025. Even as German businesses publicly plead for foreign talent, the recognition process for foreign qualifications has become so complex and expensive that many qualified Filipino professionals simply give up before completing applications. Chancellor Olaf Scholz's coalition government talks constantly about welcoming skilled immigrants while maintaining bureaucratic structures that make such immigration nearly impossible. Filipino engineers watch German construction projects stall for lack of workers, while their own visa applications disappear into processing delays that stretch beyond 2 years. The language requirement reveals Germany's deeper contradictions. Filipinos must prove C1 level German proficiency for jobs where English is the working language, and German colleagues struggle with basic conversation. It's bureaucratic theater that serves political optics while solving none of Germany's actual labor shortage problems. Country number 13, France. France holds 13th place through what can only be described as bureaucratic artistry in the service of exclusion. The nation that gave the world liberté, égalité, fraternité has perfected immigration restrictions that appear principled while remaining practically insurmountable for most Filipino applicants. Work permit approvals tell the story clearly. Down 42% for Filipino professionals in 2025, concentrated in sectors where France faces acute shortages. The labor market situation test requires employers to prove no EU citizen can fill positions, a standard so subjective that prefectural offices can reject applications based on political mood rather than economic reality. President Emmanuel Macron's government speaks eloquently about French values while implementing policies that contradict those same principles. Filipino healthcare workers who helped French hospitals survive COVID-19 now face visa renewals designed to encourage voluntary departure. The message is clear. France needs your skills during emergencies but doesn't want you as permanent residents. The cultural integration requirements reveal France's deeper anxieties about national identity. Filipinos must navigate tests about French history and values that many French citizens would fail, all while working in environments where colleagues appreciate their international perspective and professional competence. Country number 12, Canada. Canada claims 12th place in what represents perhaps the most shocking transformation on our list. The nation built by immigrants has quietly implemented some of the world's most restrictive policies toward Filipino workers. Hidden behind maple leaf rhetoric about diversity and inclusion, the express entry system has become a mathematical impossibility for most Filipino applicants. Score thresholds increased 15% in 2025, effectively excluding everyone without Canadian education or work experience. The provincial nominee programs that once provided alternative pathways now favor applicants from specific countries, and the Philippines isn't among them. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's government maintains public commitment to immigration, while engineering systems that make such immigration practically impossible for Filipinos. The French Language Priority Initiative awards extra points for bilingualism, but French language training remains unavailable in most Philippine cities, creating barriers that appear neutral while targeting specific nationalities. The cruel irony emerges in healthcare and agriculture. Canadian farms face worker shortages that threaten food security, while hospitals operate understaffed due to nurse shortages. Yet Filipino professionals in both sectors face visa processing delays that stretch beyond 3 years, with approval rates falling below 20% for most categories. Country number 11, Australia. Australia takes 11th place through policies that seem designed to maintain the illusion of openness while ensuring practical exclusion. The nation built by immigration has perfected the art of bureaucratic restriction disguised as merit-based selection. Skilled migration statistics reveal the systematic squeeze. Filipino approvals dropped 44% in 2025, despite Australia's documented need for workers in healthcare, engineering, and trades. The points-based system has evolved into a mathematical arms race where only applicants with multiple advanced degrees, perfect English scores, and youth can compete effectively. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese's Labour government inherited restrictive policies from the previous Conservative administration and has quietly made them more sophisticated rather than more welcoming. The skill select system appears fair while producing outcomes that systematically favor applicants from specific countries and educational backgrounds. The regional visa programs offer false hope to Filipino professionals. Positions in rural Australia require commitments to areas where Filipino families struggle with isolation and limited opportunities for career advancement. It's geographic discrimination disguised as regional development policy. Country number 10, South Korea. South Korea claims 10th place as the K-wave's popularity contrasts sharply with labor market reality. The nation that exports cultural content worldwide has become increasingly closed to the Filipino workers who helped build its economic miracle. The E-9 visa system caps foreign workers while facilitating 4,800 Filipino deportations in 2025, revealing the harsh reality behind Seoul's soft power success. Factory quotas dropped 25%, eliminating traditional pathways for Filipino manufacturing workers who previously found stable employment in Korean industrial cities. President Yoon Suk-yeol's administration promotes domestic employment priority, using high youth unemployment to justify restricting foreign workers. The K-surety bond system now excludes many Filipino applicants through financial requirements that seem designed to prevent rather than facilitate legal employment. Meanwhile, South Korean companies actively recruit in Vietnam and Bangladesh while restricting Filipino applications. The message is clear: Korea wants workers, but not Filipino workers. For families who invested in Korean language training and cultural preparation, these restrictions represent not just economic loss but personal betrayal. Country number 9, Japan. Japan holds 9th place through policies that perfectly embody the nation's complex relationship with foreign workers. The land of the rising sun desperately needs Filipino talent while maintaining cultural and bureaucratic barriers that make long-term settlement nearly impossible. The technical intern training program has become a pathway to exploitation rather than opportunity. Filipino participants face restrictions on job changes, family visits, and skill development that trap them in positions with limited advancement potential. Deportation rates increased 30% in 2025 as program violations became grounds for permanent exclusion. Prime Minister Fumio Kishida's government acknowledges Japan's demographic crisis while refusing to implement immigration policies that might actually address it. The specified skilled worker visa offers 5-year terms without family reunification rights, ensuring that Filipino workers remain temporary guests rather than potential citizens. The cultural barriers compound legal restrictions. Language requirements favor written Japanese over practical communication skills, while employment practices assume cultural knowledge that many Filipino workers cannot reasonably possess. It's systematic exclusion disguised as cultural preservation. Country number 8, Italy. Italy takes 8th place through immigration policies that seem designed by Kafka rather than practical administrators. The birthplace of the Renaissance has created bureaucratic mazes that consume years of Filipino workers' lives while producing minimal actual immigration. Work permit statistics tell a story of systematic dysfunction. Filipino approvals fell 40% in 2025, despite Italy's desperate need for healthcare workers and agricultural labor. The Decreto Flussi quota system allocates visas through lottery, mechanisms that bear no relationship to labor market needs or individual qualifications. Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni's government has perfected the politics of appearing tough on immigration while maintaining systems that benefit no one. Filipino nurses qualified to work anywhere in Europe face Italian bureaucracy so complex that many simply choose other destinations, leaving Italian hospitals understaffed while political leaders claim immigration success. The regional disparities create additional complications. Northern Italy desperately needs Filipino workers, while southern regions resist immigration for political reasons. Filipino families find themselves caught between economic opportunities and political hostility that makes daily life unbearable. Country number 7, United Kingdom. The United Kingdom claims 7th place in what represents the most dramatic reversal of immigration policy in recent European history. Brexit. Britain has transformed from a destination where Filipino professionals could build careers into a fortress protected by points systems and salary thresholds that exclude all but the most elite applicants. The skilled worker visa statistics paint a devastating picture. Filipino approvals plummeted 48% in 2025, the steepest decline among major economies. The 26,200 pounds salary threshold excludes Filipino nurses, teachers, and care workers, exactly the professions where Britain faces critical shortages that threaten essential services. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak's government maintains that these restrictions protect British workers while NHS hospitals operate short-staffed and care homes close due to workforce shortages. Filipino healthcare professionals who helped Britain survive the pandemic now face visa requirements designed to encourage departure rather than integration. The cruel mathematics of post-Brexit immigration reveal deeper contradictions. Britain needs 500,000 additional healthcare workers by 2030. Yet policies systematically exclude the Filipino professionals most qualified to fill these positions. It's economic self-sabotage disguised as immigration control. Country number 6, Malaysia. Malaysia takes 6th place through policies that seem particularly harsh given the historical connections between the two Southeast Asian nations. The former British colony has implemented restrictions that betray decades of regional cooperation and shared cultural understanding. Foreign worker levy increases of 300% in 2025 have priced Filipino workers out of traditional sectors like palm oil plantations and manufacturing. The government's Malaysia for Malaysians campaign has created an atmosphere where Filipino workers face not just bureaucratic obstacles but social hostility that makes daily life increasingly difficult. Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim's administration promised regional cooperation while implementing policies that systematically exclude ASEAN neighbors. The recalibration of foreign worker policies has resulted in 8,200 Filipino deportations in 2025, many involving workers who had lived legally in Malaysia for over a decade. What makes Malaysia's restrictions particularly painful is the geographic proximity and cultural similarity that once made it a natural destination for Filipino workers. Families could maintain connections across borders, and workers could return home easily for emergencies or celebrations. Now those same families face separation by bureaucratic walls that seem designed more for political theater than economic necessity. The palm oil industry reveals Malaysia's contradictions most clearly. Plantation owners publicly state they cannot find Malaysian workers willing to do this demanding work. Yet government policies make hiring Filipinos nearly impossible through permits, restrictions and quota systems that bear no relationship to actual labor market needs. Country number 5, Singapore. Singapore holds 5th place through what can only be described as the systematic engineering of Filipino exclusion. The Lion City has perfected immigration policies that appear meritocratic while producing outcomes that systematically favor other nationalities over Filipino applicants. The employment pass approval rates tell the story, down 46% for Filipino professionals in 2025, despite Singapore's position as a regional financial hub desperate for skilled talent. The Fair Consideration Framework requires employers to advertise positions locally before hiring foreigners. But enforcement appears selectively strict for Filipino applications while remaining lenient for Western applicants. Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong's government has created a points-based system that appears objective while incorporating criteria that systematically disadvantage Filipino candidates. University rankings favor Western institutions, work experience valuations prefer certain countries, and salary thresholds reflect Singapore's cost of living rather than global compensation standards. The domestic worker policies reveal Singapore's deeper attitudes toward Filipino labor. While thousands of Filipino helpers work in Singaporean homes, their children cannot attend local schools, families cannot visit long-term, and pathways to permanent residence remain non-existent. It's systematic exploitation disguised as employment opportunity. The regional implications extend beyond individual cases. As ASEAN's wealthiest member, Singapore's policies influence immigration approaches across Southeast Asia, making this small nation's restrictions ripple throughout the region that Filipino workers have traditionally called home. Country number 4, United States. The United States claims 4th place, shocking for the Philippines' strongest ally and home to 4 million Filipino Americans. The H-2B visa lottery system now excludes 78% of Filipino applicants, while the 8,900 deportations in 2025 included long-time residents caught in bureaucratic traps that seem designed more to frustrate than to facilitate legal immigration. Tourist visa rejection rates spiked to 35%, the highest since 2001, creating barriers that prevent even family visits and business travel. The Biden administration's America First labor policies mirror Trump-era restrictions despite different rhetorical approaches. proving that immigration restriction has become bipartisan consensus rather than partisan position. New prevailing wage requirements price out many Filipino workers from traditional sectors like healthcare and hospitality, creating artificial labor shortages while qualified workers remain excluded by bureaucratic design. The ironies run deep. America needs 8 million healthcare workers by 2030, yet Filipino nurses, who comprise 28% of foreign-trained nurses in the U.S., face increasing barriers that seem calculated to discourage rather than screen applicants. The USCIS processing delays now average 14 months for Filipino petitions versus 8 months for other nationalities, suggesting systematic discrimination disguised as administrative procedure. Filipino families watch their American dreams disappear into bureaucratic black holes while politicians speak eloquently about immigration reform that never materializes. What makes this particularly jarring is the geopolitical contradiction embedded in these policies. The Mutual Defense Treaty positions the Philippines as America's oldest ally in Asia. Yet security cooperation doesn't translate to civilian benefits or opportunities. Military-to-military exercises increase. EDCA bases expand. But people-to-people connections face systematic barriers that contradict alliance rhetoric. The South China Sea tensions make this contradiction even more complex and troubling. America needs the Philippines for strategic positioning against China, yet treats Filipino citizens with heightened scrutiny at borders and immigration offices. It raises a difficult question that American policymakers seem reluctant to address. Are we allies only when it comes to war, but liabilities when it comes to work and family reunification? For Filipino Americans watching relatives struggle with visa denials and deportation threats, the contradiction between ironclad alliance rhetoric and immigration reality creates deep frustration and questions about American commitment to partnerships that extend beyond military cooperation. Country number 3, United Arab Emirates. Taking the third spot is a destination that has served as a second home for hundreds of thousands of Filipinos, the United Arab Emirates. While Dubai and Abu Dhabi have long represented opportunity and prosperity for Filipino families, 2025 saw a massive crackdown that shattered decades of established migration patterns and employment relationships. The deported over 9,500 Filipinos last year, specifically targeting those looking for work while on tourist status, a practice that had been tacitly accepted for decades but suddenly became grounds for immediate expulsion. The visit visa to work visa route that allowed flexible employment searches has been completely eliminated, leaving thousands of Filipino job seekers stranded between legal categories. The Emirati government's Emiratization program has evolved from gentle encouragement to aggressive enforcement, imposing substantial fines on private companies that fail to hire locals for skilled positions. This has led to a 20% drop in new work permits issued to Filipinos in administrative and sales sectors, exactly the middle management positions that allowed Filipino families to build comfortable lives in the Gulf. Furthermore, Dubai's cost of living has skyrocketed beyond recognition, effectively pricing out lower-income Filipino workers who can no longer afford to sponsor families or maintain the standard of living that originally attracted them to the Emirates. Housing costs alone have increased 35% since 2023, while salary offers for Filipino workers have remained stagnant or declined. For global observers and U.S. policymakers, the pivot represents something larger than immigration policy. As they join BRICS and diversify their economy away from oil dependence, they are simultaneously diversifying their labor pool away from traditional sources. The Emirates now lean more toward African and South Asian labor for construction work, while recruiting Western or local talent for management positions, leaving the Filipino middle manager and service worker squeezed out of opportunities they had occupied for generations. The days of easily landing a job in Dubai are officially over, marking the end of an era that supported millions of Filipino families and contributed billions in remittances to the Philippine economy. Country number 2, Saudi Arabia. Number 2 is the giant of the Middle East, and the numbers here are nothing short of staggering. Saudi Arabia, as the largest historical employer of OFWs, has implemented Saudization policies that have reached a devastating tipping point for Filipino workers and their families back home. In 2025 alone, over 15,200 Filipinos were repatriated from the kingdom, many involuntarily, as Saudi Arabia restricts dozens of job categories solely for Saudi nationals. This represents not just individual hardship but a systematic dismantling of employment relationships that have sustained the Philippine economy for decades. Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman's Vision 2030 is no longer just an ambitious plan. It has become a reality that actively displaces foreign workers in favor of Saudi nationals. Jobs traditionally held by Filipinos, from HR officers and retail managers to certain engineering roles, are now legally barred to foreigners through regulations that eliminate entire employment sectors overnight. The Kiwa platform has made it easier for employers to terminate foreign worker contracts with minimal justification, leading to a disturbing rise in cases of runaway workers who fall into illegal status through no fault of their own and face eventual deportation. Filipino workers who have lived legally in Saudi Arabia for years find themselves classified as illegal residents due to employer actions beyond their control. The geopolitical implications extend far beyond individual cases. Saudi Arabia's strategic pivot away from exclusive U.S. reliance toward engagement with China reflects in their labor policies as well. As the kingdom reshapes its society and economy, the guest worker model that sustained millions of Filipino families is being systematically dismantled. For the Philippine economy, which has relied heavily on petrodollars sent from Riyadh and Jeddah, this contraction represents a ticking time bomb. Saudi remittances have historically provided the foreign currency stability that allows the Philippines to maintain its international trade relationships and debt obligations. Country number 1, Kuwait. And finally, the number 1 country tightening its borders against Filipinos is Kuwait. This isn't just about quotas, visa fees, or bureaucratic delays. This represents a total diplomatic and labor relationship breakdown that serves as a warning for the entire OFW system. Kuwait takes the top spot because it stands as the only country on this list that has repeatedly implemented complete suspensions of all new visas for Filipino workers, leaving families separated and economic plans destroyed. Following the tragic murder of Julabi Ranara and recurring disputes over domestic worker protection, Kuwait has halted entry for tens of thousands of Filipinos, leaving job orders cancelled, flights grounded, and recruitment agencies facing bankruptcy. Even as diplomatic talks attempt to patch up relationships, the underlying environment remains incredibly hostile to Filipino workers at all skill levels. Kuwait has begun systematically replacing Filipino domestic workers with labor from Africa and South Asia in a deliberate strategy to reduce dependency on Philippine labor. This isn't market forces at work. This is conscious policy designed to eliminate Filipino presence from Kuwaiti society and economy. The Department of Migrant Workers has officially flagged Kuwait as a high-risk destination, and deployment numbers show a 60% drop year over year. Filipino recruitment agencies that built their businesses around Kuwaiti placements now face financial ruin, while families who invested in training and preparation for Kuwaiti employment find themselves with worthless qualifications. Why does Kuwait deserve the number 1 position? Because it represents the worst-case scenario that haunts every OFW family. A complete border shutdown born from tragedy, diplomatic failure, and host country hostility that can emerge overnight. It demonstrates how vulnerable the Philippines' labor export model truly is, not just to economic fluctuations or policy changes, but to the political whims and social attitudes of host nations. When Kuwait closes its doors, it sends a shockwave through the entire OFW ecosystem, affecting not just workers bound for Kuwait but those considering overseas employment anywhere. It serves as a grim reminder that the Philippines' reliance on exporting its people is subject to forces beyond economic planning or diplomatic negotiation. Kuwait's restrictions represent the ultimate vulnerability of a nation that has built its economic survival on the willingness of other countries to welcome its workers. When that willingness evaporates, whether through tragedy, politics, or prejudice, millions of Filipino families face immediate crisis. From the shifting alliances in the United States to the completely closed doors of Kuwait, the world is changing in ways that threaten the foundation of how millions of Filipino families survive and prosper. The golden era of the OFW, where a plane ticket represented a guaranteed pathway to a better life, is facing its biggest existential threat in the program's 50-year history. We just examined 20 nations that are tightening their borders, raising their requirements, implementing quotas, or systematically deporting workers who have lived legally in their countries for years. This isn't merely a list of statistics and policy changes. These are 20 warning signs of a fundamental shift in how the world views labor migration and foreign workers. The global economy is turning inward. Economic nationalism is rising across developed and developing nations alike. Automation threatens traditional labor-intensive jobs that Filipino workers have historically filled. And the Philippines, A nation that has relied on exporting its people for economic survival since the 1970s now finds itself caught in the crossfire of this global lockdown on labor mobility. The implications extend beyond individual families facing visa denials or deportation threats. If these trends continue, the World Bank's projection of a 10 to 15% decline in global remittances could trigger an economic crisis that affects every Filipino family, whether they have relatives abroad or not. Remittances don't just support OFW families. They provide the foreign currency that stabilizes the peso, funds imports of essential goods, and maintains the Philippines' ability to service its international debt obligations. So here is the critical question that Philippine policymakers, economic planners, and every Filipino family must confront. If the world is systematically closing its doors, is the Philippines ready to open its own economic opportunities? Can we finally build an economy where Filipinos don't have to leave their families and sacrifice years of their lives to find decent paying work? Or are we destined to keep knocking on doors that are slowly but systematically slamming shut? The choice isn't just about immigration policy or international relations, it's about whether the Philippines will remain economically dependent on the goodwill of other nations, or finally develop the domestic opportunities that could keep Filipino families together while building prosperity at home. The clock is ticking, and the doors are closing. The question is, what are we going to do about it? If this analysis opened your eyes to the reality facing Filipino workers worldwide, hit that like button so this crucial information reaches more people who need to understand what's happening. If you have family members abroad or are considering overseas work yourself, share this video. They need to know what they're facing in today's changed world. The decisions being made in these 20 countries will shape the future of millions of Filipino families. Make sure your family is prepared.